everyone. So for our group, we choose Indonesia as our main topic for the topic inflation.
Okay, for introduction, inflation is one of the major economic issues because it affects the cost of living and economic growth. In this study, we compare inflation of Malaysia and Indonesia, including its impacts and the government policy used to control inflation. And then, definition of inflation. Inflation is the continuous increase in the price of goods and services over time. When price increase, the purchasing power of money decrease, meaning consumers need to spend more to buy the same product. Okay, for important. For the first one is compare inflation patterns. First, this study helps us understand and compare the inflation pattern in Malaysia and Indonesia. The second one is analyze the impact. It explains how inflation affects consumers, business, household spending, and the country's economic growth. For the third one is evaluate government policies. It evaluates whether the government policy in both countries are effective in controlling inflation. For the lastly is learn best practices. It helps identify useful lessons and best practice that can improve economic stability and support sustainable development.
My name is Alia Christina binti Sumi. So there are three data analysis between Malaysia and Indonesia. So first is comparison inflation between Malaysia and Indonesia. So from 2022 to 2024, both Malaysia and Indonesia experienced changes in inflation, but the trend was a bit different because the COVID-19 pandemic reduced business and consumer spending. While Indonesia still record positive inflation, so in 2021, inflation started to increase in both countries as the economy recovered. So the highest inflation happened in the 2022 due to Russia-Ukraine conflict, while costs, fuel, food, and transportation costs to rise. After that, inflation gradually decreased in 2023 and 2024 because supply chains improved and government policies helped control prices. Overall, Malaysia had more stable inflation compared to Indonesia during 5 years. So second one is factors influencing inflation trends. So several factors affect inflation in Malaysia and Indonesia between 2022 and 2024. The main factor COVID-19 pandemic, which reduced business activities and distribute the economy. Another factor was global supply chain problems, which caused shortage for raw materials and increased transportation costs. So the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2022 also pushed up the prices of fuel, food and other goods worldwide. Besides that, government policies such as subsidies and interest rate change helped control inflation. Exchange rate changes also affected import prices, so it making some goods more expensive. So there are four factors influencing the inflation trends. So the first one is when inflation goes up, prices increase faster than people income. This means our money cannot buy as many things as before. For example, low-income families are also affected, but the most because they're spending most their money on daily needs like food, transport, and housing. So second one is job opportunities. Inflation can affect jobs too. A moderate level of inflation may show the business are growing and hiring the more workers. But if inflation becomes too high, companies may reduce or hire cut costs because running business become more expensive. So the third one is cost of living. Inflation makes everyday expenses like food, petrol, electricity, and rent more is expensive. But if inflation become too high, family needs to spend more on basic needs, so they have less money to save or buy other things. In Malaysia, government subsidies help reduce some of the burden. So the last one is business. Businesses also face higher costs of raw materials, transport and workers. Some companies may struggle to make a profit if they cannot increase their prices. At the same time, people spend less, so business may sell fewer products and economy can slow down.
Hi, my name is Adriana, and I will proceed with the economic policy implemented. So, for the economic policy implemented, we choose Indonesia. Indonesia used monetary policy through interest rate hikes by Bank Indonesia, which is the country's central bank. This policy is used to control inflation when prices increases too quickly. So, when Bank Indonesia raises interest rates, borrowing money becomes more expensive. Because of this, consumers are less likely to take loans or spend on non-essential items, and businesses may delay expanding or investing. So at the same time, people are encouraged to save more because they can earn higher returns on their savings. As a result, less money circulates in the economy, overall demand decreases, and inflation gradually slows down. The main purpose of this policy is to control inflation, maintain price stability, support long-term economic stability, and protect consumers' purchasing power so that people can continue to afford goods and services. And that's it for this introduction of economic policy implemented. Now we will see the differences between Indonesia and Malaysia. I will pass it to the next presenter.
My name is Izakaisa binti Sahaya. We compare the effectiveness of Malaysia and Indonesia in controlling inflation. Malaysia uses fiscal policy, which specifically by increasing taxes. This reduces disposable income, so consumer spending decreases. As a result, aggregate demand goes down, which helps to control inflation. However, one downside is that it may increase the cost of living in short term. On the other hand, Indonesia uses monetary policy mainly by increasing interest rate. This makes more loans more expensive, so borrowing, spending, and investment decrease. This helps reduce the money circulating in the economy and can control inflation more quickly. However, if the interest rate stays too high for too long, economic growth may slow down. So in conclusion, both countries aim to reduce inflation, but they use different approaches. Malaysia's method works more gradually, while Indonesia's method usually works faster. So both policies have advantages and trade-offs depending on the economic situation.
Overall, Malaysia and Indonesia are two different economic factors, but both countries face similar challenges, including higher living costs, reducing purchasing power, and impacts on economic growth. Therefore, effective monetary and fiscal policies, together with strong government measures, are essential to maintain price stability, protect consumers, and support sustainable economic development.